I have a voice in my head. Maybe you do too. Maybe we all do. That when faced with some moment of decision, some moment charged with possibility, the voice says, "You'll never make it. You will fail. Who do you think you are to even try?" When I take this step to make some risky move forward, that's when the shame governor starts to spool itself up. Why is that? Who is that? And what does it take to move despite that voice?
The only way it becomes possible is that the person at the other end of the rope, when you get to the ground, says, "That was awesome."
Shame, imagination, and a shared world. Today on Don't Hold Me to This.
I mean, you've known me well. You know me well enough and long enough to this certainly won't surprise you, but you know this about me. But I can find parts of myself that are really free and really able to articulate the value of what I want to do, and with confidence, right? That's there.
Right.
It's just that there's this other part. It's like, no, that'll never work.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of, there's that self, that part of me that shuts those things down.
Yep.
And wants to keep me in this kind of space. And Mark talked about kind of this governor that works.
Mark, you're a therapist.
Yeah, shame governor.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to think about what it feels like. It's like there's this thing that every time I want to get up to speed and kind of break through that 55 barrier, the governor says, "No, yeah, that's too fast.
Yeah, you're redlining. You're pegging out. You don't have any more gears." I was climbing. This is related to that. I was climbing with my friend Nate the other day, and I
back at climbing. That's good.
Yeah. It feels really good. Honestly, it
feels
good. It also feels really maddening because I know how good I used to be. I mean, I know that I used to be better than I am now.
Right.
And it's hard to get on a climb that I know that I would have warmed up on 3 years ago.
Right.
And now it's like, that's the big climb for the day. And so I was leading I think it was like a 510 with a little roof. And it's totally fine, smooth, clipping, like kind of thoughtless, until I get to the roof, and I do the roof just fine. And it's like maybe a 3 or 4 foot roof. It's not a big roof. Mm-hmm. And then there's one clip on the roof, and then one clip that's like 3 more feet on the face.
Yeah.
And
where you have to actually get up and over your feet to clip it.
Almost. It's not quite that bad, but it's near that bad. And I'm hanging upside down, or like back to the ground, 30 feet off the ground. And I know I have to pull out 3 feet of rope in order to clip. And my left hand, which is my strong hand, starts to it's holding on and starts to open up. And I'll pull rope out, and then the handle open. I'm like, no, don't do it. And this voice in my head says, you're not gonna make it. You're not gonna make it. You can't do it. You need to ask Nate to take rope so that you can let go and hang or whatever.
And God was telling you something.
And I got down from the climb. And I told Nate all of that. And I told him that's a theme, not just in climbing, but in a lot of my life, where I've got this voice that says, you can't take on this new project. You don't know what you're doing. You can't plant this church because you don't have the skills or the experience or the support or the intelligence or whatever. And he asked me a question that I didn't know, and I still don't know how to answer, but I think it is like maybe a fundamental question. He said, "Whose voice is it?" Whose voice?
That's profound.
It's totally profound. And I said, I don't know whose
That's
voice it is.
profound.
And because I want to say that's my voice. And obviously it's in my head. So in some way it's my voice.
Sure.
Um, and then I wanted to say, like, I wondered how other people might answer it. And I think other people might say, like, oh, it's my dad's voice, right? It's my mom's voice. It's my elementary school teacher's voice. Do you remember how uh, Frederick Buechner described the devil?
I don't know that I remember him ever describing the devil.
He said, it's that thing out there that's always laughing about us or laughing at us. It's
No,
that
I've
thing
never
out there
heard
that's
that.
always laughing at us. And I wondered if it was that, and maybe a combination of all those things.
Sure.
But it's super powerful, maddeningly powerful. What's weird is
Yeah.
that it's not debilitative. My wife and I have we bought this letterpress print from some friends of ours that have a letterpress shop in downtown Colorado Springs. Um, in a season of our life when we were living in a camper, we thought it'd be this really cool adventure. And it was, but it was also kind of out of necessity because we were shopping for a house and like we're not competitive in this market for a house. Um, and so it's us and three of our five kids living in this camper in a friend's garage. And and we saw this letterpress print in the shop, and then immediately we both knew that it was for us, and it said, we will always figure it out. That's what the sign said. And so while the voice is sets up like these non-trivial speed bumps to me being and doing who I want to be and do, they're not roadblocks. I don't think they're roadblocks. I think they're speed bumps. Because we are the kind of people we've discovered through 20 something years of marriage that we are kind of wired in a way that we figure things out. Even if it's not like, how do we get to where we thought we were going to be? It's how do we reframe
Yeah.
where we thought we should be and lose some of those expectations about the kind of life that we thought we were supposed to live. And yet that voice, it's like it is maybe more present and more prevalent. It's not decreasing. It's at least staying the same, if not becoming a sort of more constant conversation partner who is rarely, if ever, I think never, interested in my good.
Yeah, and that makes me wonder if it's more prevalent or if you're just more aware of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? If what
Mm-hmm.
you've experienced and your own attunement with yourself. Like what I would say is it's my attunement with myself that's made me acknowledge that that voice is there.
Mm-hmm.
Um uh more
Yeah.
than I think the
Yeah.
voice is louder or more prevalent. I just think I can name it at least. And um
Yeah.
yeah, and that's interesting because I'd never thought about that. I think Heather and I are Heather and I go through life very similarly, right? You know, I mean, we're even where we are is a product of that. It became clear that we just couldn't rebuild in Eugene.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, so we were like, okay, what are we going to do? We have to figure this out. We have
Yeah.
to. And I'm now literally thinking, which a month ago I would have said, no, I can't do that. But
Mm.
I'm actually now thinking maybe I'll just go get my LPC. I'll just do it. You know, who
Yeah.
cares? I'm
Yeah.
53, but who cares?
Right.
And
Who
I've
says who says I can't do that?
and the you know whatever we can say about providence, right? There is no to say something providential is to say nothing,
Mm-hmm.
because if the theology of providence is true, then everything's providential. It doesn't, you know,
That's
you're
right.
not saying anything.
Right.
But I do think there is a way to live with it that says, you know, providence has conspired to bring us here.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't this we are not simply on a path of our own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
The our 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 stories have shaped us into this moment, and in this moment, getting an L, going ahead and getting you know, at least considering getting an LPC is it wouldn't make sense not to at least consider it,
Yeah.
because everything is kind of shaped our lives into this moment of going, maybe
Yeah.
maybe this is what I need to do.
Yeah. So you
Um,
said a word that I think has become important for me in the kind of calculus that we all go through as we're thinking about the next step. And it's that language of possibility. I
right.
at least have to consider it as a possibility, or I'm faced with the possibility of getting this advanced degree or whatever. And that word is so charged with both the kind of opening of hopefulness and with the like shutting down of fear, but at the same time. And I'm curious why, when we're faced with possibility, like what's the difference uh, between choosing to see the opening of hope more and stepping into the possibility and saying, "Well, I'm going to do it. I don't know the outcome, but I'm going to do it," or the choosing to see, and maybe choosing is the wrong word, choosing to see the closing down of fear, and I'm not going to do it, and then I talk myself out of it. What? How would you reflect on that?
One, I don't think choosing is the wrong word.
Mm.
I've come to embrace more and more that this that that what you're describing, and a lot of what even the Christian faith presents as possibility, right? Is it still comes down to will we choose to take take that step?
Yeah.
Will we choose faith, which is moving into the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
moving into possibility
Mm-hmm.
without the assurance of outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know what goes into it. I know for me, I think I would say for me, it comes down to coming to the place of desperation
Mm.
where 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 alternate ways of constructing a life have become less plausible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or less or less whatever the fear of the possibility of sort of leaning into the honesty of the moment and myself, and both acknowledging, right, that I have the shame governor that's
Mm-hmm.
operating,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and being able to just say that out loud
Mm-hmm.
and just go, that this is what I deal with, this is what
Mm-hmm.
happens in my body.
Mm-hmm.
um Whatever the fear is of moving down that road, um, has become way less scary than um, the system that tried to provide safety against even naming my fear,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's making sense,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
for, I mean, put it plainly, the staying locked in a tightly constructed framework where I had kind of it all managed and could articulate it and name it, in at least in my head I thought I could, that no longer feels safe.
Mm-hmm.
um or maybe the better way to say it is it just no longer feels human. It
Yeah.
doesn't,
Right.
it just, I would rather go, yes, this is my fear. If somebody said, that sounds really stupid to sell your house in Oregon and move to Dallas and buy another house and have no idea what you're going to do for an income, I'm like, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
guess you're right. It does.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that. I mean,
Right.
I can see why you would say that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know what's gonna, we've literally had to say out loud, you know, I don't know what we're gonna do if we have to sell this house and move in with my parents, my
Yeah.
mom or my sister. And that's scary. That's
Mm-hmm.
scary.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't do this lightly, but I feel like to have, let's say what, what the most logical, sensible option would have been was I'm an ordained PCA minister. There's people who have called me about jobs. There's churches out there that need a pastor. I suspect if I were to throw myself into the process, I could get a job.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is everything about that as a possibility feels like death to the story that I've been living.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like I would actually be rejecting, and I'll say this as stupid as it is to say, but it would be rejecting the the good gifts that have come from the accident.
Mm. Why?
And
Why? Why is that stupid to say?
well, because the accidents, and it's, is thoroughly tragic.
Mm.
It's a it's been a devastation in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it's stupid in that it it could be a trite denial of the tragedy of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I certainly don't mean it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I mean by it as the good gift of it is that whatever it means for the accident to neither be just dumb, random, stupid, senseless, um, kind of nihilistic view of it, or a trite, you know, everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever sits in the space between those two ways of framing our sorrows and suffering, the good gift is what I'm trying. That's what I mean by the good gift.
Mm-hmm.
It's, or maybe the better way to say it is the sort of um, the tragic gift, or the, maybe good isn't, maybe we should put a different modifier on
Right.
gift.
Right.
um
Right.
but a gift all the same. And um so I think for me, that's where the difference has really, um that's where this different way of looking at the possibility ahead of ahead and seeing life framed through the lens of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe when you're desperate, you really don't have, you either have, it seems like you have those three choices, right? You can either try it your way, sort of Jedi mind trick your way out of it. You know,
Right.
these are not the droids you're looking for, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is not really that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Everything happens for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, or you can just allow despair to be the whole, to define the whole of it.
Mm-hmm.
Or the despair can push you to something that um, is beyond
Mm-hmm.
beyond the despair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That whatever that possibility of new life, hope, beauty, um, wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And it seems like if you're operating in those two other modes, the like hand waving over the severity of a hard life, um, or if you are um, in some way allowing the despair to be in charge and to tell you that everything is terrible. There's no way out of this, um, and you'll be like hanging on by the skin of your teeth until this miserable life comes to an end. Like shame
right.
doesn't have to operate in any of those two uh, fields because, well, maybe that's the question. Like it seems like it's when you, this is in my experience, when I take the step to make some risky move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna start a design studio, or I'm gonna plant a church, or I'm gonna go get my advanced degree in therapy, or I'm gonna have another kid, or whatever. I'm gonna write a poem, whatever. That's when the shame governor starts to spool itself up. And I'm interested to know like what is happening as we move away from, we'll call this downplaying, the Jedi mind trick thing, would move away from downplaying and move away from despairing into a real forward step of believing and acting in our own agency, our own creativity, our own sense that
Yeah.
we can make a positive, meaningful contribution to the world. That's when shame starts to go, no, slow the car down. Like it's, you'll never do it. You'll never make it.
Yes. So it seems like within our metaphor, what we're saying is these two are operating within the constraints of the governor.
Yeah, that's
Like
right.
these are never trying to outpace the governor.
Right.
And so the governor never has to kick in and go, whoa, wait a minute here.
Right.
And so it's not that shame isn't operating, it's that we've said we'll play by your rules.
Right. Right.
Um and uh and so it's in this other space where we force um we force the issue, and the governor then has to kick in and go, no, well, this is not what we agreed to.
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
and so, like, going back to your question, my thought is, this comes out of IFS, that voice is that part of me that that voice in my head is that part of me that has never known the safety of whatever, love, forgiveness, acceptance. It's that part of us that's exiled,
Mm-hmm.
or it's part of me that's exiled and is now trying to protect me from further harm, further embarrassment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that voice is like, if you do this, you're just gonna get slapped down.
Mm-hmm.
or whatever.
Well, and
You're gonna
that's the thing that I think I want to understand more deeply. Like when I'm in that when I'm in the climbing gym, there's a certain set of things that I know. Like I know that my friend Nate is gonna do his job and catch me if I fall. I
so you're
know
not scared of hitting the floor.
I know the rope is got plenty of tensile strength to catch me. I know my harness is rated at a lot more weight than I am. I know all those quick draws on the wall are going to do their job. I know that it's going to be a moderately soft landing in the air.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And still, the voice presents itself, the governor presents itself um, as though it's interested in protecting me from something. And you called it being slapped down or being embarrassed or whatever. And it seems like that's the part that the shame governor never opens a door to, never explains. Like,
Right.
why do I need to be protected from that? Number one. Number two, what am I losing if I am protected from that over and over and over again? Like, what are the downsides of this, of the kind of like safe existence that the shame governor would suggest that it is providing for us? And what does it take to shift away from like, I might be embarrassed if I can define embarrassment as a kind of like public display of some shortcoming of mine, right? Like if I
Mm-hmm.
make that move, pull the rope out to make the climbing move, and I miss the draw and I fall an extra 2 feet, everybody in the gym will hear all those quick draws go up against the wall, and they'll all turn and
Mm-hmm.
look at me. And so like embarrassment is the kind of objective fact of having a shortcoming of mine publicly on display is indisputable. But then the question is, okay, but why is that bad? Why should I avoid that? And why, when the shame governor puts its finger on that and says, I've got to protect you from that, I just sort of implicitly agree that I should be protected from that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but what I start thinking with your question is that to have the healthy wherewithal to um uh to sort of go through that process with a kind of confidence, rather than shame, rather than saying, okay, I might be embarrassed. I might actually show myself to be in over my head here, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, I, I think wherever this comes from, and I think we could probably talk about a lot of different places it comes from. Seems like you have to have a deep sense of abiding confidence that there's safety for you on the other side of that embarrassment.
That's exactly what I was going to say as you were talking. I was thinking, to put it in the concrete terms of the climbing gym, if I have one person, and it'd be better if it were more, but I have one person that when I come down, he's like, man, good try. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Then it
Yeah.
almost like it cuts off all of the things that I think that everybody else in the gym might be thinking, and everybody else in my workplace, and everybody else in my church, and everybody else on the in the neighborhood. Like pick a context. To have one person say you did a thing that might generate embarrassment or shame or whatever, but when you come down from that thing, like you on the other side of it, I'm here to tell you, man, that was
Celebrated.
awesome. That was really
Yeah.
courageous. Then what it does is it actually renames the experience from public display of my shortcoming to effort to exercise courage. Boom. It gets renamed into this really positive experience that I actually hope marks out my whole life.
what's interesting is like I think about the climate community. The climate community is very much that way.
Totally.
Very much more likely to say, "Bro, that was awesome," than
Yeah.
to come over and go, "You're an idiot."
Right. Right.
Well, what are you doing here?
Yep.
Um, so, which I guess that's maybe just a side point, but but it makes me think about, but I do think about that in contrast to the church community, which doesn't, I would never say that about the church community,
Right.
right? That the church community is a place that you have this sort of sense of it as a culture that would go, dude, that was awesome, good try.
Right. Right.
And but I think that's right.
So I think
And in
then
some ways that's
go
no,
ahead.
go ahead.
I think then the question is, one of the questions is how do I become that person on the other side of some event for other people? How do I become that safe
Yes.
place
Yes.
for my kids, for my wife, for my friends, for my neighbors? What do I say? How do I conduct myself so that I am one of those people that says,
Yes.
that is able to reframe a negative experience into, or not even to reframe, but to explore a negative experience, to see all of the positive constituents that it took to get there, like the courage, the confidence, the kind of abandon, the trust in the rope, right? To use that as an ongoing metaphor. How do I become that
Yeah.
person? And then
Mm-hmm.
how do I then be a part of cultivating a larger community of those people? Like what does it take?
Yeah.
What does it take to do that?
I don't know. I appreciate the question, but my mind is going with, I want to add to this in
Yeah.
terms of diagnostic still, which is the parenting model that I grew up under,
Mm-hmm.
Christian parenting model,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote Christian parenting model.
Quote unquote.
I'm not saying they weren't, my parents were Christians and
Right.
were certainly doing the best they knew under the Christian framework that they were given.
Yeah.
But I think part of my governor is shaped by a parenting model that looked on a child's behavior with suspicion toward what was underneath.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right. Right. Right.
There was an assumption that what was underneath was manipulation or deception or selfishness or whatever it was.
Yep.
It was, and I brought that into my, I've carried that forward into my parenting in some ways, and more so with Jonathan, our firstborn, than with Violet now, but still, um, I've one of the things I've been realizing over part of this journey for me has been realizing the devastation of the lack of just of being framed through you're a sinner versus being framed through you're a joy and a delight and a gift.
Yep.
Right.
That's right. Yep.
And um and so, and I think the ramifications of that suspicion, you can see the tentacles of it throughout our society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In terms of, we've talked about this, about, even like the quote unquote culture wars for Christians is like,
Yep.
There's the suspicion that, non-believer means a sort of an active agent for the devil and the kingdom of darkness. And
Right.
there's an assumption that just because there's this kind of suspicion that if your child's educators are not Christians or don't have a Christian worldview, then they can't possibly have your child's well-being honestly at heart.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right. Right. Right.
And so it doesn't simply kill the soul of an individual to be treated through that lens, but it kills the soul of a community.
Right.
When that's our posture toward one another.
So some of the answer to a cultivating of a different kind of community and a cultivating of a different kind of self is being attuned to the things that I'm assuming about other people, the sort of like story I'm telling, the fundamental story I'm telling about who they are and what they could possibly be doing, and shifting that, attuning to it, questioning it, interrogating it, and shifting it to I'm gonna believe the worst. I'm gonna tell the bad story, or I'm gonna believe something else, and I'm gonna tell a good story, and that at some point comes down to a choice. Like in some way, the world is as it is because of what I believe about it, right?
Yeah.
Because of the assumptions that I'm making about it and the actions that I'm taking out of those assumptions, right? If I believe my neighbor is like always trying to move his fence over onto my yard, or is constantly like trying to steal my mail, then I'm going to act a way toward him that I wouldn't act if I believe, no, he's actually just weed eating the weeds on my side too. Not because he's wanting to move the boundary line, but because he's kind, right? And it's going to change the way I behave toward him, and it's going to change the kind of world that I live in.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think, and I think, so I guess then to go back to your question of, what I think there is a choice. Mm-hmm. And I think the choice at its most fundamental level comes down to will you tend to yourself?
Yeah.
Will you tend to the narrative that you tell first yourself about yourself, right? Yeah. The narrative that you inhabit, that allows that governor to sit quietly in the background and never be challenged.
Yeah.
And then if you're willing to do that, will then you do the hard work of telling a different kind of story.
Yeah.
Because one of the things about that governor is that and I find this so interesting. There's nothing profound about this other than I think it's so true in terms of that shame governor, is that sitting underneath that is often our own contempt for ourselves, and often it's early childhood selves, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've been asked that question by a therapist, right?
Yeah.
Why do you hate that little boy?
He said, and he said, why do you have such contempt for that little boy? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've felt that as I've started peeling back some of the layers of this, is it's not even the contempt of others that is really hanging me up. It's the contempt I have for that part of me that was either embarrassed or too afraid, or what, in that moment, that child that was doing what a child does.
Yep.
And so in some ways we took on the narrative of lack of safety.
Yeah.
And lack of celebration. But we've now become the voice that's saying you're worthless, or you're an idiot. My self-talk is always, why am I such an idiot? It's
totally,
that was I'm an idiot. Why did I do that?
Yeah.
And I think, again, this is why it goes back to a choice, because to do the work to invite yourself into that space and ask yourself why you have so much contempt for yourself is extremely difficult to do emotionally. Maybe not difficult in terms of it costs something. It's not easy.
Yeah.
I guess maybe to bring it back to full circle is the only, not the, maybe we shouldn't say the only way. Yes, I want to say this. The only way it becomes possible is that the person at the other end of the rope, when you get to the ground, says, that was awesome.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
The choice is made. The choice, we have to make the choice. But the only way we can actually navigate these things is if we have a community that is saying, that was awesome.
Yep.
That was courageous. That provides the safety that we all desperately want and are looking for.
Yeah.
And again, and then that, again, this is why this is all kind of self-informing, is because it takes people to make that choice to be that kind of person, and to be that kind of community, and to do that kind of work themselves, so that they have the freedom to see other people and to see the possibility in their lives, because they've done the work to live in possibility for themselves.
Right.
And so this is where, a community, this is never simply about individual choice. This is about how we live together as a community, and those are the things that humans just struggle to do well.
I think in part because what it takes is it takes choosing to respond instead of with reactivity, to respond with imagination. And what I mean by that is, take, for example, this is fictitious example. It's never happened, but I can imagine it happening. My 13-year-old son, who loves to do manual labor. He loves to use tools. He loves to mow the lawn. He's been begging for a weed eater. So take, for example, my son goes and gets the weed eater out of the garage and weed eats the front yard and throws a rock through the big picture window on the front of the house. And I'm inside and I hear the window break. It's this loud sound, which creates this anxious reaction that then I respond out of when I go outside to see what's going on. What are you doing with the weed eater? You didn't ask me to use the weed eater. You broke the window. What were you thinking? Right? That's everybody in the gym, in the climbing gym, turning their eyes and looking at the guy who just failed to make a clip and he fell 2 extra feet. And that guy imagining they're all thinking I'm an idiot. Right? And choosing to respond in imagination is to go outside and go, my son was trying to tidy up a yard that's gotten away from me. My son was wanting to beautify this space for himself and for us and for our neighbors. My son was taking initiative to do some manual labor that I don't like doing. Like, I don't like weed eating. I just don't like weed eating. Like, there's a million more good things about what he did in this scenario than the bad thing about breaking the window. There's a trillion more good things. And the problem in the scenario of my reacting is that I don't have the imagination to see those things. That's the problem. All I can see is the broken window because I've responded out of my shame governor. What are people going to think? We have a broken window now. I don't have control of my kids, right? Whatever. All of the things that I see because I'm reacting out of contempt for myself rather than reacting or responding out of imagination for all of the amazing, creative, selfless, service oriented, kind things that my son was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, that hits home because that sounds, I would get that situation all wrong.
Well, there's a reason why I've got this as a good example.
Yeah, you said shame governor, and I think it still is the shame governor.
Mm-hmm.
But I think part of what the shame governor is doing is what the shame governor does is it says, look, if you live within this frame of this is how we sort of tritely explain everything,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even sometimes profoundly, but still in a very boxed in way, or this is how we define everything, which is, everything's stupid, sort of a kind of cynical, again, nihilistic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's still a very, very, it's a very controllable box.
Yeah.
Right. It's a way that we can say this is either good or bad. We can, and I think the shame that what's going on in that framing is, again, it's that sense of safety. It's
Mm-hmm.
so to enter into what you did, into that space of possibility and imagination, is to enter into a situation where maybe there's things that need to be corrected, right? Like, hey, buddy, we just got to make sure we do this or whatever. Like, it's not that there is no instruction or mentorship
Mm-hmm.
for your son,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a way of framing the whole situation into a moment of possibility, and you, rather than trying to box the situation in, you're entering into it now as a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And which means you celebrate,
Mm-hmm.
but you also invite him to see the possibility
Mm-hmm.
for himself, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think if I can
And
add a layer to that, like I want to enter into it as a mentor who's always interested in like my own growth and other people's growth. I'm also entering into it as an artist who sees first the beauty of it, the richness of it, the color of it before I see the
hey, by the way, this is why we wear eye protection. That maybe that's all it is right. Hey, let's this this is why we cover our eyes, just to make sure we're safe.
Entering into that situation first in the perspective of an artist who's tuned to see the rich beauty of it actually even recolors all of what I thought were the downsides of it, right? Like,
when how you inhabit how you inhabit that process.
Right. I may not even mention the broken window because, like,
yeah,
he didn't throw the rock. The weed eater hit the rock hidden in the grass, right?
It's something you very well could have done yourself, right?
I probably would have if I ever weed eated.
Yeah, in those situations, what happens and it's really a good metaphor, because what I would feel, what I would frame in the language of sort of fatherly correction, would most, at least most viscerally, come out of, and that's why I said what I said, is anything like that disrupts the world I'm trying to construct for myself. I try to invite others. I try to contort others into that construction.
Right.
Yeah. And And so the part of the choice is to be willing to be in, rather than to try to contort people into your construction of the reality you're trying to create for yourself, is to allow that moment to invite you into the possibility of something else.
Totally. I've got a like a kind of anarcho-socialist friend who we were having a really wonderful conversation about like property and ownership related to these wonderful hot springs in Colorado. And basically what's happened, and I'm happy to have a longer propertarian versus socialist construction kind of a conversation at some other time. But what's happened with the hot springs is that like there's this public good, geothermally heated water coming up out of the ground that then gets like bounded privately and then sold, access to which gets sold to people. Right. And what I said to him, and he was like just over the moon that I said this. He was like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you've grown in this way." I said I walked up to the hot springs and I looked at it with a fence built around it with people that had paid the exorbitant money to go on the other side. And I looked at that water and I thought, surely this is ours. Like whatever you think about like private property and public property and everything, was surely the hot springs are ours. Surely this is ours. And that's I think that's the posture that shifts me to a more imaginative response to my son weed eating, rather than to say, he has disrupted the world that is mine, that I've been constructing for myself. Surely this world is ours. We're genuinely both living in this story as co-equal characters in the story. And I've got a role and he's got a role, but surely this story is ours.
Yeah. That's a complete reframing of the parenting model that I've been most exposed to.
Don't Hold Me to This podcast is a production of Don't Hold Me to This. You can find out more, do some more reading, and get in touch at don'tholdmetothis.com. No apostrophe.